So today, we're going to continue our series on the book of love. And we've talked about in part 1, what is love? In part 2, how to love yourself. In part 3, how to love others. In part 4, how to love life. And what's really interesting about that, I had a woman on one of my podcasts yesterday, and she was communicating with me, and she said, life is cruel. And I said, what do you mean? She says, I'm attracting all this negative stuff. And I said, well, give me an example. She says, well, last week in the freeze, I had a pipe break, and I've got this damage in my house. The ceiling fell in, there's water in, I had to get it out. Why is the universe doing it to me? I don't love myself. And I said as calmly and as nicely as I could, the universe isn't doing things to you. It's just doing things. You see, we can't control everything that's happening in the universe. We don't have that power. What we do have power over is this. How do we respond to it? Last night, Jean and I were out to dinner at our favorite restaurant, Amici's in Carrollton. And after we were about almost done, the chef Bartolino came out. And we've known Bartolino for, 28, 29 years. And so he came out and we said, how you doing? He said, well, my house had all these pipes burst, and all of a sudden the water came in. I had a flood, the first floor, and they're coming in. And he started telling us a story about how they ripped up all the flooring on the first floor. They ripped out the baseboards. They ripped out they ripped out ceilings. And I said, do you have insurance? He goes, yes. And I said, so you're going to get almost a brand new home, aren't you? They're fixing your piping. They're giving you all new flooring, new baseboards, new plaster, new paint. And he says, yeah, we're making some upgrades. I said, so be excited about it. He says, but it's going to take 2 months. And I said, if you were redoing your house, it would take 2 months. And it was the perspective, and you could see he lit up. And then as we were leaving, Jean and I walked out the door. Well, one of the people that was working there opened the door, and I looked at her and I said, are you related to Bartolino? And she says, yeah, I'm his wife. I've never met his wife. I've seen her before, but I didn't know it was his wife. And I said to her, I said, how great. And she said, what do you mean, how great? I said, how great you're getting a whole new home. And she looked at me and she says, oh, she told you about the damage? I said, no, you're getting a whole new home. You're getting to redo your home the way you want. And she smiled and says, I am. Isn't it interesting? You just have to reframe the question. And I think that's the key to how to love life. Because life is going to be happening all around us. But how we look at it, how we question, what is the phase that we look at it, gives us the experience. You see, to love life, like to love ourselves and to love others, it's to accept life as it is. Things happen. I had to accept this last year that I fell and I broke my hip. Life didn't do anything to me. I fell and I broke my hip. How I deal with that, that's my choice. And so I accepted it, and now I'm in the process. I'm 12 weeks out from my last surgery date, and I'm doing great, walking 3.5 miles a day. I'm doing 125 flights on the stair climber twice a week. I'm back to weightlifting. I still have a little work to do to build strength in the peripheral muscles in the leg, but you know what? I'm better for it. Here's the key thing is, it taught me to be compassionate. Here's another thing that really happened to me, and it came up as I was doing one of my classes this week. How is it that we can remain humble, believing that we're an individualized expression of God? And the answer that came to me is by simply realizing that everyone is an expression of God. And you see how that fits in with loving life? Because if you love yourself, it's not that you're better than anyone else, but you realize you're the infinite expressing. And people say, well, that's egotistical. Well, no. Why not? Because I believe everyone is the infinite expressing. So they're no better than and no worse than. We're all the same, except we're more than this physical body and this mind. And that's key to understand. And this is my favorite thought of the day that I've written probably in 10 years. Life is a constant state of falling in love. Life is a constant state of falling in love. Think about that. Life is changing all the time. People in our lives are changing all the time. We are changing all the time. So in every moment, we have the opportunity to accept ourselves, to accept others, to accept life, which is to fall in love. Isn't that magnificent? So it's never that we got love, that we're there. It's every moment of every day we fall in love. You see, to love life, we must first become aware that life is happening all around us. Everything is life. Most of us, we're so narrow focused that we don't see everything going on. We see a very minute part about what's happening to us. We don't notice our wife giving us signs here, our children giving us signs here, our boss doing this. We're too focused on our ego's desire that we don't keep a broad focus. So to love life, we must become more aware. We must expand the focus of the lens so it's not narrow, but it's wide. And then in that awareness, we have a bigger view of what this life is, because life is infinite. Here's the other thing. Once we start to become aware that life is bigger and we start to observe it, as we observe life, we must come to the realization that life is always in balance. It is never out of balance. There is always as much challenge as support. There's always as much good as we would define it as bad. There's always, because the universe is in balance. This is one of the hardest concepts for people who are beginning the spiritual process, or beginning the process of trying to be at one with life. It's to understand that there's always a balance. And here's where the divine exists. The experience of divine exists between the 2 points of contrast. It exists between the inhale and the exhale. It's that point in between. It exists between this thought and the next thought. It's that point in between. It's that point that would be on a teeter-totter where there's perfect balance. That's where love, fully love, exists. And as I was reading Osho this week, Osho compared and said that love, meditation, and sex were the exact same thing. And you're saying, Lee, what are you talking about? Love, meditation, and sex. Let me ponder, let me throw this out at you. What is love? Love is that point where there is no longer any desire for anything else. Love is that point where we are fully present in the moment. Fully, completely present in the moment. And when we're present in the moment, love is that point where we forget ourselves and we dissolve into the experience. That same thing is true for meditation. In deep meditation, there is no desire for anything else. We're fully present in the moment and we lose who we are. The same thing's true for sex. When it's sex with love, we have no other desire, we're fully present in the moment, and we forget we even exist. This whole idea of being in the moment is the most beautiful concept, and yet it's one of the most difficult to achieve. It takes work, and it lasts and gone just like that. But it's so worth it when the experience happens. You see, what I've come to understand is that our life purpose is to simply become more aware And life gives us the opportunity to do that. With everything that happens to us, we have the opportunity to be aware, to see things differently, to see the balance, to see the excitement, to create from the new experience. When we get an experience that's new, it stimulates something else to be experienced. And life is a continual loop of creating new and ever expanding experiences. I believe that that's what life is. I am so not about, I'm there, I'm retired, I'm not going to do anymore. I'm just going to golf, go to restaurants, and that's it, and watch television. I love the growth. I love the expansion. It gives me juice. And when I say juice, that's what life is. You're juiced when you're living. You're juiced when you're present. You're juiced when you're connected. You've got life force, prana, moving through you, and you can't wait to share it. Because remember what we talked about last week. When you love yourself and you love everything, you want to share it. And you know what? Life wants to share all of itself with you. The question is, are you open to seeing it? That's key. It is through our awareness that our love of life can be experienced. To be conscious, to be aware. That's how we get the experience of life and why it's so great. It's just there. And we can only love when we're fully present. That is the only time love exists. If we're not present, there is no love because there is no balance, there's no awareness. If there's judgment, we're not fully present because we're dragging the past in. If we're thinking about the future, we're not in love. It's when we're in the moment. And that's really important. One of the questions I asked this week in my classes that I taught and in my community gatherings, I asked the individuals this question: give me your definition of what stress is. Do you know most people struggled? Most people really couldn't give a definition that made sense, that gave them clarity. So I'm going to share with you an idea of what you might consider when you look at the idea of stress. Stress is simply our inability to adjust to change. Think about that. Stress is our inability to adjust to change. When our child changes, have we adjusted to it? When our partner changes, have we adjusted to it? When work environment changes, have we adjusted to it? When the weather changes, have we adjusted to it? When our living situation changes, can we adjust to it? Do you notice how stress is just our ability? And guess what, folks? Change is now happening faster than I've ever seen it happen. And people are saying there are more people more stressed out. There are more people, unfortunately, committing suicide. And people commit suicide because they can't deal with the stress. This is the time to learn to be flexible, to be able to see the balance in everything. And when you do that, you take back your power. And when you can release stress, your body comes back into homeostasis. When our bodies are stressed, we're more prone to disease entering in than at any other time. And with what's going on with COVID-19 and all of that, one of the best things you can do is to relieve the stress in your life so your immune system can function in its perfect way. It's just incredible when we understand that life is always changing. And in order to love life, we must develop the ability to adjust to the changing situations we encounter. It's that simple. The ability to be flexible, to adjust, because it is only when we are stress-free that we fully experience life. We see it from all angles, from all sides. And when we see it from all sides, it is just glorious and grand. The greater our awareness and our ability to simply observe, the greater our ability to love life. Are you willing to open your eyes to the greater, ever expanding thing that life is, and to put yourself in the middle of it and experience it to its fullness so you can experience even more in the next moment. Remember, the power is in you. The power is love, and love is who you are.